All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting John Coley's The Curse of Mr. M's Castle to see exactly how it flips the script on middle grade fantasy. If you're a bit tired of the same old chosen ones waving magic wands routine, you are absolutely in the right place, because this story completely redefines what a magical adventure looks like.
Okay, let's dive into this. What actually happens when you ditch the glittering spells and replace them with circular saws and international shipping rates? Today's story grounds the supernatural firmly in blue-collar reality. We're looking at a narrative that takes a traditional Scottish monster and drops it right into the middle of a very real, very mundane American elementary school.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to look at a new fantasy blueprint, see some magic in the woodshop, track down monsters rooted in history, meet some very real kids with real flaws, look at a surprisingly compassionate resolution, and finally end with a wild true story twist.
So, part one, a new fantasy blueprint.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference we're talking about today. Usually, middle grade fantasy leans super heavily on high magic to solve problems. Potions classes, ancient spells, mystical chosen ones, you know the drill. But on the right, you see the reality of Mr. M's castle. Instead of a magical academy, we get an after-school woodworking club. Instead of enchanted artifacts, we have pocket wood planes and asthma inhalers. And instead of having epic magical duels, our heroes literally have to ask permission just to go to the bathroom. The contrast is sharp, and it completely grounds you in the story.
Moving on to part two, magic in the woodshop.
There are no hidden castles in the clouds here. The real magic is just happening right inside Mr. McAllister's fourth grade classroom. The author actually includes this quote from real-life YouTuber and maker Jimmy DiResta. "If it looks straight, it's straight." And honestly, that perfectly captures the kid's entire vibe for problem solving. Griffin, Garrett, and Sarah use actual tools to build things like a Viking chair and a garden bench. They aren't conjuring these items out of thin air. They are wrangling heavy 8-foot boards, lathering on wood glue, and driving in screws through butt joints, which, by the way, is just a totally standard, straightforward way of joining two flat pieces of wood together. The author painstakingly details the actual mechanics of woodworking. Just look at these skills highlighted in the text. The kids are cutting an 8-foot 2x12 board in half with a loud circular saw, carefully making squares from 2x4s, and operating a jigsaw to cut out perfect circles for a clan badge. It grounds the reader completely in the physical, sweaty labor of crafting. It's basically saying that hard work, precision, and a bit of spray lacquer are honestly just as effective as waving a wand. All right, part three, monsters rooted in history. So we've established the grounded setting, right? But what about this supernatural thread? Well, what's really interesting about this is how the monster's origin ties into grim history and absolute logistical reality. Centuries ago, a man named John Brown was executed in Scotland, and according to lore, his followers essentially transformed into woodland creatures known as brownies. Generations pass, and one of these brownies is just hanging out in the toy room of McAllister Castle, which is a real place, by the way. But how does it get to America to terrorize our heroes? It steals a marker, grabs some tape, and literally mails itself via international postage inside a Viking chest. The sheer absurdity of a magical creature having to rely on the postal service to cross the ocean is just fantastic. But as you'd imagine, international travel is stressful. The brownie gets incredibly agitated by the journey and by the loud American schoolchildren, and it transforms into a boggart. The text defines a boggart as a brownie whose flight or fight instincts are stuck in complete overdrive, morphing into whatever a person fears most. So we see a kindergartner named Nevaeh run into it, and boom, she sees a giant venomous snake. Later on, the All A's Lunch Club opens the chest, and they witness an absolute explosion of spiders erupting right into the room. Which brings us to part four, real kids, real flaws. Because when a boggart attacks, who steps up? They certainly aren't magical chosen ones born of some ancient prophecy. Nope, they are just an incredibly ordinary trio of fourth graders. We've got Griffin, who is brave, sure, but self-admittedly short and skinny. Garrett, who needs glasses, gets distracted easily, and honestly panics at the drop of a hat. And Sarah, who is highly organized and super well-read, but suffers from severe asthma. They share freckles, crop tops, and absolutely zero magical abilities. They are incredibly vulnerable. And that vulnerability has a very, very real consequences here. When Sarah bravely volunteers to confront the boggart inside the classroom, she doesn't get hit by a dark curse or a flashy spell. She suffers a real, life-threatening asthma attack from the sheer terror of the encounter.
She collapses out into the hallway, her lips are turning blue, and her friends are frantically scrambling to dig her medical inhaler out of her pocket. It's a really stark reminder that in a grounded fantasy like this, the danger takes a deeply physical, real-world toll.
Next up, Part 5, a compassionate resolution.
So, the crucial point is, how exactly do these ordinary kids defeat a terrifying creature? It relies entirely on empathy, practical craftsmanship, and, yep, postal logistics again. When Griffin finally faces the monster, he climbs inside that dark Viking chest. But when he finally reaches the boggart, it doesn't turn into a fire-breathing dragon. It turns into Griffin's own face, pale and full of absolute despair. And instead of fighting it, Griffin recognizes that this monster is just frail and exhausted. He simply pulls out a container of medicinal honey and offers it something to soothe it. He chooses compassion over combat.
From there, the kids come up with this hilarious, completely pragmatic, non-magical 3-step plan to get rid of it. Step 1, take turns sneaking medicinal honey to the boggart every single day to heal it back into a peaceful brownie. Step 2, use their woodworking skills. We're talking a makeshift compass, a jigsaw, some spray lacquer, to build a beautiful wooden clan badge with the motto Fortiter, which means boldly, as a going-away gift. And Step 3, trick their teacher, Mr. McAllister, into paying the international shipping fees to mail the badge, with the monster hiding inside the box, all the way back home to its castle in Scotland. It is blue-collar problem-solving at its absolute finest.
And finally, Part 6, the true story twist.
Let's move to the final piece of the puzzle and see how this all builds to the ultimate subversion of this fantasy story. If you check out the addendum provided in the source material, the author, John Coley, drops a massive behind-the-curtain secret. He calls this the story that told itself. Because, get this, almost everything in it actually happened.
Just look at this shocking list of elements that were 100% real. The author actually sponsored an after-school woodworking club. The trio of kids, Griffin, Garrett, and Sarah, are real students who built those exact projects. Mr. McAllister is based on his real-life bearded colleague, Matt Foster. Nurse Katie? Real. McAllister Castle is actually Glenbar Abbey in Scotland, which truly does have a rare toy room. Even Spooky Science Night and the horrifying spider explosion actually happened at his school. Basically, the author just looked at his everyday chaotic life as a teacher, threw a Scottish boggart into the mix, and let the real world handle the rest.
Which leaves us with this final thought. When was the last time you saw a fantasy hero stop a monster by checking international shipping rates, right? The Curse of Mr. M's Castle proves that you absolutely do not need chosen ones or ancient prophecies to tell a captivating magical story. Sometimes all you really need is a good group of friends, a solid butt joint, and a little bit of medicinal honey. It's a brilliant deconstruction that highlights the magic hidden right inside our own mundane, hardworking lives. Honestly, I hope this explainer leaves you eager to explore some more grounded, blue-collar fantasy out there. Thanks for joining us.